For years, he had loved her quietly, patiently, without expectations. But now, for the first time, he wondered if maybe, just maybe, he didn't want to stay silent anymore. And, unfortunately for both of them, Ethan finally noticed, because from across the ballroom, he saw Valentina smiling at Evan, and Evan smiling back. The sight hit him like a truck. For reasons he couldn't explain, his mood immediately worsened. A lot. And for the first time, a very unpleasant feeling appeared in his chest. Jealousy. For the first time in months, Ethan Lee could not focus. The sight of Valentina smiling at Evan replayed in his mind over and over again. It irritated him. No. It bothered him. No. It felt wrong. Valentina was supposed to be beside him. She was supposed to be looking at him, waiting for him. Yet somehow she had spent the entire banquet laughing with Evan. And, the worst part? She looked happy. Genuinely happy. Meanwhile, Valentina was completely unaware of Ethan's crisis. The following week, Beijing welcomed the monsoon season. As tradition dictated, one of the oldest elite families sponsored the annual Rain Blessing Festival, a centuries-old ceremony where influential families gathered to pray for prosperity, good harvests, and successful business ventures during the rainy season. The event took place in the gardens of an ancient temple on the outskirts of Beijing. The weather forecast had predicted light rain. Instead, the heavens opened. Rain poured from the sky. The guests immediately scattered beneath pavilions and covered walkways. Businessmen protected expensive suits. Socialites protected expensive makeup. Investors protected expensive watches. Everyone was hiding. Everyone except one person. Valentina Mu. Victor nearly dropped his umbrella. Valentino looked horrified. She's not. Victor looked horrified too. She is. There, in the middle of the rain-soaked garden, Valentina stood with her face tilted toward the sky. Then she laughed. A bright, carefree laugh. The kind her family rarely heard outside the mansion. The kind that reminded everyone she was still young despite her terrifying business reputation. Vivian sighed. She used to do that as a child. Vincent smiled. I remember. A second later, Valentina kicked off her heels. The entire Mu family froze. Valentina. She ignored them. Rain soaked her dark hair, her elegant white dress, her sleeves, her shoes, everything. And yet, she looked happier than she had looked in months. The festival musicians continued playing. The sound of traditional instruments drifted through the rain. Then Valentina began spinning. Slowly, gracefully, laughing as raindrops splashed around her. The sight was breathtaking, beautiful, free. For once, she was a Miss Mu. She wasn't an heiress. She wasn't a business genius. She wasn't a future corporate leader. She was simply Valentina. Across the garden, Evan forgot how to breathe. Completely. 𝓲𝓻𝓸𝓹𝓱��� glanced at him, then at Valentina, then back at him. Oh. Everything suddenly made sense. Nearby, Eleanor grabbed Luna's arm. Evan is finished. Absolutely finished. Meanwhile, even Ethan stared. His actress companion was talking beside him. He didn't hear a single word, because for the first time, he realized he knew almost nothing about Valentina. He knew the elegant fiancée, the perfect heiress, the responsible businesswoman. But this laughing girl dancing in the rain? He had never seen her before. And somehow, that realization hurt. A lot. Valentina eventually noticed the horrified expressions directed at her. She blinked, then grinned, and ran toward the nearest pavilion, straight toward the crowd, straight toward Evan. The moment she arrived under the shelter, water dripped from her hair and sleeves. Victor marched forward. You are impossible. Valentina smiled. I know. Valentino handed her a towel. You'll get sick. Worth it. It was not worth it. It was. The twins looked ready to surrender. Nearby, Evan quietly offered his handkerchief. Valentina accepted it automatically. Their fingers brushed. For a brief moment, neither moved, neither spoke. The noise of the festival seemed to disappear. Then Valentina looked up. and found Evan staring at her. Not awkwardly, not nervously, just looking, as though she was the most beautiful thing in the world. Something warm fluttered inside her chest. Something dangerous. Something impossible to ignore. For the first time, Valentina looked away first. And for the first time, Evan smiled like a man who finally had hope. The person who finally snapped was 𝓕𝓪𝓽𝓮. Because after 6 months of watching Evan Lee suffer voluntarily, she had reached her limit. Sir. Evan looked up from his documents. Yes. Confess. The pen in his hand paused. What? Confess. Evan stared. Sophia stared back. Neither moved. Finally, you've lost your mind. No. Sophia slid a folder onto his desk. Inside were photographs, business events, galas, charity functions, meetings. In every single one, Evan was looking at Valentina. Every single one. Evan closed the folder. Immediately. I dislike you. Noted. Meanwhile, Valentina was having her own problems. Specifically, Evan Lee. And his stupid face, especially his Bambi eyes. And his stupid smile. And his stupid habit of remembering every little thing she mentioned. 3 days earlier, she had casually complained about wanting strawberry cake. Today, a strawberry cake appeared in her office. No note. No explanation. Nothing. Just cake. Valentina knew exactly who sent it. Which was somehow worse. Miss Moo? Her assistant Jessica looked concerned. Valentina pointed dramatically. Look. The assistant looked. Then looked again. It's cake. Exactly. The assistant slowly backed out of the room. Valentina stared at the cake. Then smiled. Against her will. A week later, the Lee and Moo families attended another charity event. By this point, half of Beijing was convinced Evan and Valentina were secretly dating. The other half was wondering when they would finally admit it. Valentina arrived slightly late. The moment she entered the ballroom, her heel caught on the edge of a step. For a terrifying second, she lost her balance. Several guests gasped. Then suddenly, a hand caught hers. Firm, warm, familiar. Valentina froze. Evan froze. For a moment, neither let go. The ballroom seemed to disappear. The music faded. The conversations blurred. There was only the two of them, and the fact that Evan was still holding her hand. Then Victor loudly cleared his throat. The illusion shattered immediately. Valentina jumped back. Evan looked suspiciously calm. He was not calm, not even slightly. Later that evening, Valentina escaped onto one of the hotel's balconies. The city glittered beneath the night sky. For the first time all evening, things were quiet, peaceful. Then the balcony door opened. She didn't need to turn around. She already knew. Evan. A soft chuckle answered. Valentina. For several seconds they simply stood together, looking over the city. Comfortable, easy, natural. The kind of silence neither of them minded. Then Evan spoke. Do you know what everyone is saying? Valentina immediately groaned. No. They think we're dating. She covered her face. This city needs hobbies. Evan laughed. The sound made her smile. Then he looked at her. Really looked at her. And suddenly, the joke didn't seem funny anymore. His expression softened. The city lights reflected in his eyes. Would that be so terrible? Valentina's breath caught. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. The wind, the noise, everything. Her heart began beating much too fast. Evans wasn't doing much better. The distance between them suddenly felt very small. Dangerously small. Then, the balcony door burst open. Eleanor, I saw them come out here. Luna stopped. Eleanor stopped. Everyone stopped. Silence. Complete silence. Valentina wanted to disappear. Evan wanted to disappear. Eleanor wanted to jump off the balcony. Luna wanted pictures. Immediately, the moment was completely ruined. And yet, as Valentina looked at Evan, she couldn't stop smiling. Because for the first time, she realized something. The happiest moments she'd had all year had all involved him. The person responsible for the disasters all year was 𝓕𝓸𝓸𝓸. Naturally, because Ethan had finally noticed what everyone else had known for months. He was losing Valentina. The realization hit him during a family dinner. Unfortunately, the realization came far too late. "You're staring." Eleanor's voice pulled him from his thoughts. Ethan frowned. "What?" "You're staring at your phone." Across the table, Luna looked interested. Very interested. The dangerous kind of interested. Eleanor continued. "You've been staring at Valentina's social media for 20 minutes. Ethan nearly dropped his chopsticks. Silence. Complete silence. The entire table turned toward him. Grandmother Lillian looked unimpressed. Edward looked even less impressed. Ethan suddenly regretted existing. A lot. 3 days later, he made a decision. A terrible decision. The kind of decision that sounded reasonable in his own head. And nowhere else. He was going to get Valentina back. Unfortunately, Valentina had not been informed. Meanwhile, Valentina was having a wonderful day. For once, no meetings, no business reports, no social events, just a quiet afternoon. Naturally, that was when Ethan appeared. He found her in a private garden attached to one of Beijing's luxury clubs. The moment Valentina saw him, her good mood evaporated. Ethan. Valentina. The atmosphere instantly became awkward. Neither smiled, neither moved. Finally, Ethan spoke. "We need to talk." Valentina sighed. "No." His expression darkened. "No. No." Simple. Direct. Final. For the first time in years, Valentina wasn't yielding, wasn't waiting, wasn't chasing. And Ethan hated it. "Valentina, I made mistakes. You cheated." The words landed like a slap. Because they were true. Painfully true. Ethan opened his mouth, then closed it again. For once, he had no defense. "You don't understand." Valentina laughed. A short laugh. A cold laugh. One Ethan had never heard before. "No." She looked directly at him. "I understand perfectly." The garden became silent. "You knew it hurt me." Her voice remained calm, which somehow made it worse. "You knew." Every word struck harder than the last. "And you did it anyway." Ethan felt his stomach drop. Because she wasn't angry anymore. Anger meant there were still feelings left. This was disappointment. And disappointment was much harder to fix. Far away, near the entrance of the garden, Evan had just arrived. He wasn't looking for trouble. Unfortunately, trouble was looking for him. The moment he noticed Ethan speaking to Valentina, his expression changed. Not jealousy, maybe, but concern. Because for the first time, Valentina didn't look annoyed. She looked hurt. And Evan hated that. More than he should. Much more than he should. For a brief moment, his hands clenched, then relaxed. Because this wasn't his conversation. Not yet. But for the first time, Evan made a decision. He was done waiting. Done watching from a distance. Done pretending friendship was enough. Because if Ethan could finally realize what he lost, then Evan could finally fight for what he wanted. And what he wanted was Valentina. Valentina was annoyed. Not because of Ethan. Not because of work. Not because of her family. But because her brain refused to cooperate. It had been 3 days since the garden incident. 3 days. And she kept thinking about Evan. His smile. His laugh. His stupidly pretty Bambi eyes. His stupidly perfect manners. His stupidly thoughtful gifts. His stupidly... Valentina slammed her face into her desk. Jessica immediately looked concerned. "Miss Mu?" "I'm fine." Jessica did not believe her. Not even slightly. Meanwhile, across Beijing, Evan was receiving life advice. Unfortunately, the advice was coming from Eleanor, which meant it was mostly chaos. "Brother." "No. I haven't said anything." "You were about to." Eleanor grinned. "Confess." Evan sighed. "Eleanor. You've been in love with her for years." "Eleanor. Literally years." "Eleanor. At this point you're becoming embarrassing." Across the room, Luna nodded. "She's right." Evan considered disowning both of them. A week later, the Moo Group announced a new partnership project, a massive investment involving several elite families, including the Lee Group, which meant Valentina and Evan would be working together. The moment Victor heard the news, he narrowed his eyes. The moment Valentino heard the news, he narrowed his eyes too. The twins shared a look, a dangerous look. Meanwhile, Valentina was too busy panicking, because she had somehow gone from seeing Evan occasionally to seeing him almost every day. Life was cruel, very cruel. The first joint meeting began at 10 in the morning. By 10:15, several executives were sweating. By 10:30, Valentina had destroyed 3 proposals. By 11, she and Evan were arguing. Professionally, mostly. I still think the expansion should begin in Guangzhou. Evan looked calm. I disagree. It should start in Shenzhen. Valentina gasped. The audacity. Several executives immediately looked down. Nobody wanted to be caught in the crossfire. Unfortunately, the argument continued. Back and forth. Numbers. Strategies. Projections. Statistics. For nearly 20 minutes. Then, Evan smiled. A very small smile. Valentina froze. Because she knew that smile. And she hated that she knew that smile. What? Evan leaned back. You enjoy this. I do not. You do. I don't. You absolutely do. The room became silent. Because for some reason, their conversation sounded less like a business disagreement and more like flirting. Jessica buried her face in her notebook. Sophia looked exhausted. After the meeting ended, the executives fled. Literally fled. Only Valentina and Evan remained. The conference room suddenly felt much larger and much quieter. Valentina gathered her documents, carefully avoiding eye contact. Evan. About the garden. His movements paused. Immediately, dangerously, Valentina suddenly forgot every word she had prepared. Great. Wonderful. Fantastic. A long silence followed. Then Evan stood. Slowly. His expression softer than she had ever seen. And suddenly, the air felt different. More serious. More dangerous. More real. Valentina. The way he said her name made her heart race. I meant what I said on that balcony. She froze. Completely. His gaze never left hers. If people think we're dating. His voice lowered slightly. That wouldn't be a problem for me. Valentina forgot how breathing worked. Entirely. Her pulse hammered against her ribs. Evan took one step closer. Not enough to corner her. Just enough to make it impossible to ignore him. For years, he had watched, waited, hoped. And now, for the first time, he was done hiding it. I like you. The words were simple, honest, certain. No games. No manipulation. No pressure. Just truth. The room became silent. Valentina stared, then stared harder. Because after months of overthinking, months of wondering, months of pretending, the answer was standing right in front of her. And somehow, the only coherent thought in her head was, his eyes are even prettier up close. Evan blinked, then laughed. A genuine laugh. And Valentina realized with absolute horror, she had accidentally said that out loud. Valentina wanted to disappear. Immediately. Preferably forever. Because after Evan Lee confessed, after months of romantic tension, after all those feelings, the only thing she had managed to say was, your eyes are pretty. Wonderful. Truly wonderful. Evan stared at her, then laughed. Actually laughed. Valentina covered her face. This is a nightmare. It's really not. It is. It really isn't. She groaned. The sound made Evan smile even more, which was extremely unfair. After several seconds, Valentina slowly lowered her hands. Their eyes met. And suddenly, the embarrassment wasn't the important part anymore. Neither was the conference room. Neither was the company. Neither was the city outside. Just him. Just Evan. Waiting. Patiently. The way he always had. Her heart softened. Dangerously. Then, very quietly, she spoke. I like you too. Evan froze. For the first time since she'd met him, actually froze. Valentina almost laughed. Almost. Then she saw the look in his eyes. Pure happiness. Warm. Disbelieving. Real. And suddenly, her own smile appeared. Small. Soft. Only for him. So, Evan's voice was suspiciously calm. Does this mean I can take you on a date? Valentina pretended to think, very seriously, for approximately 3 seconds, then nodded looking like pure sunshine. Yes. The smile that appeared on Evan's face nearly blinded her. Meanwhile, outside the conference room, Jessica and Sophia were absolutely not eavesdropping. Absolutely not. The door opened. Valentina walked out first, followed by Evan, both smiling. Sophia closed her eyes. Finally, Jessica looked ready to celebrate. The suffering was over. At last. Unfortunately, the news spread. Immediately. Because rich people were physically incapable of minding their own business. Within 24 hours, half of Beijing knew. Within 48 hours, the other half knew too. At the Mu family mansion, the atmosphere was tense. Very tense. Because Evan Lee had arrived. To meet the family. Officially. Poor man. Valentina almost felt bad for him. Almost. Victor sat on one side. Valentino sat on the other. Like bodyguards. Or prison wardens. Possibly both. Across from them sat Vincenzo Mu, the terrifying patriarch himself. Evan remained calm. Mostly. Valentina was impressed. Victor leaned forward. What are your intentions? Valentina immediately buried her face in her hands. Victor. No. Valentino nodded. Answer the question. Evan looked thoughtful. Then answered honestly. I want to make her happy. The room became quiet. Even the twins paused. Because it was such a simple answer. Such an honest answer. No grand speeches. No dramatic promises. Just truth. Valentina's cheeks turned pink. Victor noticed. Valentino noticed. Unfortunately, the interrogation continued. 3 hours. 3 entire hours. By the end, even Grandpa Vincenzo seemed satisfied, which was practically a miracle. Meanwhile, at the Lee family mansion, Eleanor was running laps around the living room. They finally did it. Luna looked equally excited. Lillian looked delighted. Edward pretended not to care. Failed. Completely. And for the first time in years, the Lee family looked happier than ever. All except one person. Ethan. He learned about the relationship from social media, which somehow made it worse. The photograph had been uploaded. Nothing dramatic. Nothing scandalous. Just a candid image. Valentina smiling. Evan looking at her, as though she were the most important person in the world. The comment section loved it. The city loved it. The families loved it. Everyone loved it. Everyone except Ethan. Because for the first time, the reality became impossible to ignore. Valentina wasn't waiting for him anymore. She wasn't hoping. She wasn't chasing. She wasn't coming back. And the person making her smile wasn't him. It was Evan, the brother he had spent his entire life competing against. And for the first time, Ethan realized something devastating. He had never actually lost Valentina to Evan. He had lost her long before that. The moment he stopped appreciating her. The moment he stopped choosing her. The moment he assumed she would stay forever. By the time Evan entered the picture, the damage had already been done. And now, the person Ethan once took for granted was finally happy. Without him. 2 years later, the wedding of Evan Lee and Valentina Mu became one of the most talked about events in Beijing. Not because of the wealth, though there was certainly plenty of that. Not because of the guest list, though half of China's business elite attended. Not even because of the venue, a private island decorated with thousands of flowers. No. People talked about it because of the groom. Specifically, the way Evan looked at Valentina, as though she hung the stars in the sky, as though she was his entire world, as though he still couldn't believe she had chosen him. Valentina found it ridiculous. Very ridiculous. Evan. Yes. You've been staring at me for 10 minutes. His expression remained perfectly serious. And she stared, then laughed. The sound immediately softened his eyes, which only proved her point. Hopeless. Absolutely hopeless. The ceremony itself was beautiful, simple, elegant, perfect. When the officiant finally declared them husband and wife, the applause nearly shook the venue. Eleanor cried. Luna cried. Jennifer cried. Lillian cried. So did Veronica, Valeria, and Vivian cry. Even Jessica and Sophia cried. And Victor suspiciously looked away. Valentino refused to comment. Meanwhile, Grandpa Vincenzo openly cried and blamed pollen. There were no flowers nearby. No one believed him. 5 years later, the 𝓕𝓪𝓽 household had become complete chaos. The reason? 3 tiny disasters, otherwise known as their children. The eldest, Rachel Lee, 5 years old, inherited Evan's blonde hair, inherited Valentina's sunshine, inherited absolutely nobody's ability to stay out of trouble. The middle child, Felix Lee, 4 years old, inherited Evan's enormous Bambi eyes, inherited Valentina's adorable cheeks, inherited the family talent for causing headaches. The youngest, Olivia Lee, 3 years old, inherited everything cute from both parents, including the cheeks, especially the cheeks. Everyone adored the cheeks. The children knew it too. They weaponized them daily. One morning, Valentina walked downstairs, immediately froze. 3 tiny children sat around the dining table. All 3 looked guilty. Very guilty. Evan looked tired. Very tired. Valentina pointed. What happened? Silence. Complete silence. Then, little Felix smiled. Those huge Bambi eyes widened. His cheeks puffed. Valentina's resolve shattered instantly. Oh no. Evan sighed. Exactly. The children had somehow covered one of the guest rooms in paint. Nobody knew how. Nobody knew why. The children themselves seemed unsure. And yet, not a single punishment happened. Because the moment the children looked sad, every adult folded. Every single one. Including Grandpa Vincenzo. Especially Grandpa Vincenzo. The terrifying Moo patriarch had become completely helpless. One tiny pout from his great-grandchildren, and suddenly they received cookies. Years later, the children would learn many things. Business, responsibility, leadership, discipline. Unfortunately, they first learned that their mother was incredibly easy to manipulate, particularly when they used puppy eyes. One evening, Valentina entered the living room and immediately found Evan asleep on the couch, Olivia asleep on his chest, Felix asleep beside him, Rachel curled up against his shoulder, the television still playing quietly. The sight made her stop. For a moment, everything felt peaceful, warm, complete. Evan slowly opened one eye, then smiled. The same smile he'd always given her. The same smile from years ago. The same smile from the day he confessed. Why are you staring? Valentina laughed softly, then sat beside him, careful not to wake the children. I was thinking. Dangerous. She smacked his arm. Evan laughed. The children remained asleep. And, as Valentina looked at her husband, then at their children, she realized something. For years, she had believed losing Ethan was the worst thing that could happen to her. Now she knew the truth. Losing Ethan had never been a tragedy. It had been the beginning, because it led her here, to this family, to this happiness, to Evan, the man who chose her every day, and would continue choosing her for the rest of their lives.